I remember once a Dominican friar came and spent time with us when I was a nun in the Plum Village community. We have a practice in the Buddhist Plum Village community that when we would go out of the monastery, we would always have, if we were a nun, we would always have another nun, or if we were a monk, we would always have another monk. So the idea was to always travel with a second body to kind of protect ourselves, right? And so we noticed that this Friar Brian Pierce, who wrote a wonderful book, it's escaping me now, the title, but it's about Meister Eckhart and Thich Nhat Hanh, who he felt were his two main teachers. We Walk the Path Together, that's the name of the book, and it's about the teachings of Meister Eckhart, a Dominican friar from the 13th century, and the teachings of Thich Nhat Hanh, so a kind of Buddhist Christian book. Anyway, so he was coming there to practice and learn with our teacher. So we had a question and answer session with him because he was much senior to us, and we admired him very much. And so we asked him, one of the monastics says, well, how is it that you travel alone? We always travel with others when we leave the monastery. And he said, when I leave the monastery, I don't think about protecting myself. I think about how much love I'm bringing into the world. And I thought that was such a beautiful response, that like, it's not about, keeping the world from seeping into you, but you bringing love into the world. So that's how I love to think about this teaching of compassion as the best protection. And just some stories that for me really exemplify this teaching. There was a monk during the war in Vietnam. Thai and many of his peers would go to places where people had been, injured, and try to bring medicine and bring support, bring food. So they were taking care of a group of wounded people who were taking refuge in a school. And this was in South Vietnam. And they learned that the warring parties were going to soon start fighting right in that area. And they thought all the people they were trying to care for, some thousands of people, would get killed potentially if they were in the crossfire. So one very brave monk held the Buddhist flag and went in the battleground to ask the generals of both parties to please either have a ceasefire or not keep moving into the area where all these injured people were in the school. So he went, as bullets were flying, to take this message to both sides, and they agreed. They agreed to stop fighting. And so, how did he survive? How did he survive that trip? He had so much compassion in his heart. He so deeply wanted to protect the people who were in danger. You could say, perhaps, that the compassion in his heart protected him in that moment. Now, was he afraid? He said, of course I was afraid. But his compassion was so big. He still did that. Another story of a Tibetan monk who was imprisoned in Chinese gulags in Tibet, and he lived under torture, and saw his dear teachers, friends tortured, killed, and he made it out after maybe 20 years. And he visited with the Dalai Lama. That's one of the things the Dalai Lama does when people make it out of these prisons. He always tries to sit with them and talk to them. And this monk tells the Dalai Lama, well, I was in danger at one point. And the Dalai Lama says, danger, in danger how? And the monk says, well, I was in danger of losing my compassion. So the Dalai Lama tells that story to say how much compassion protects us. All of the things that happened to that monk, he didn't consider them danger. But losing his compassion was the most dangerous thing that could happen to him. And the Dalai Lama has said, from his experience of interviewing people who have come out of these horrible, horrible situations, it's so powerful to be able to train our minds, because he doesn't see long-term, he doesn't see PTSD and trauma in these people who have undergone such horrendous treatment because of their compassion, because of their wisdom. They are intact. And it's not to blame anyone who doesn't come out of a situation like that in such a state. It's just to say that is possible. And that is a way in which compassion can protect us. Now we have to practice a lot. We have to have a lot of support and people around us who can really manifest compassion in order to keep our hearts buoyant in such a place of darkness and heaviness. But it is possible.